All right, let's carry on. So we are here. So this is where we are. We are question 166. So let's get through this. We're going to do 166 to 170. So this is looking at fixed overheads. So a couple of things I want to make you just bring out straight away so you can understand what's going on here. First of all, we're talking about these fixed overheads. We can call this salaries, or somehow we've managed to split salaries or rent over some kind of per labor hour, with like some fixed overhead absorption rate. That's what we have here at 50p. So we're treating it like a volume thing, but it's not really. There's nothing like that. Fixed overhead's fixed. So whenever we see fixed overhead expenditure, the meaning of fixed overhead expenditure is literally, this is exactly what the actual difference was. It's a fixed cost. So for example, we know by this formula that the actual fixed overhead was actually 5,000, right? Because what you said was, well, I have an overhead of 5,000. I'm going to split it by 10,000, which comes out of 50p per labor hour. So the actual overhead was 5,000. Well, this is what actually happened. You actually spent 5,250. So you spent £250 much more than you thought you would, which makes it adverse. And that's that. I mean, that's the only one. That's the answer right there. A. If you like, we don't even have to, we almost don't have to carry on, but because there's nothing else. But I will just do this one as well. So in terms of efficiency, the efficiency variance is nothing dissimilar to how you do a labor analysis if you're looking at efficiency. What am I saying? We expect you, if you like, to use, well, let's look at it. The idea is you're going to use 10,000 hours for 20,000 tins. That's the plan. That's the budget. We expect you, therefore, to use half an hour, 0.5 hours, for each tin. That's the plan. Nothing different to a labor variance. Nothing. You made 18,000 tins, because this is asking about efficiency. You made 18,000 tins, so therefore, we expect you to therefore have used, I'm just going to give myself some space, we expect you to therefore have used, yes, 0.5 times 18,000 tins, which is 9,000 hours. How many hours did you actually use? You used 12,000 labor hours. That's just ridiculous. That's 3,000 hours too much. So that's 3,000 hours too much. And the question is, how do we cost this? We're costing them at 0.5, if you like, at 50p per labor hour. So we multiply this by 50p per labor hour, and we get the £1,500 adverse. And that's how we deal with that. So I hope you can sort of listen to this and work through it. The key point here is fixed overhead expenditure. It's just, what did we budget against what actually happened? And then we have a volume variance, you see, that we break up into this kind of efficiency and capacity. So what we've just worked out is, if you like, the efficiency variance. The capacity variance is sort of saying you thought you were going to have 10,000 hours. Actually, you actually had 12,000 hours. So that's kind of what we're sort of saying. What's the capacity? And the capacity difference would have been the difference between what you thought you would have and what you actually had, because we're trying to explain volume. So why we made more, we made less. We're just trying to understand that. And that's kind of how we deal with this. So that's question 166. Please go back and look at this again, of course. You have notes for this, so you can review this as well. This is question 167, is your standard variance analysis question, where you're given some standards, and we need to apply those standards to what actually happens, and then compare, right? Forget this, right? This is what's going on. We have our standards. So the question here is, in terms of efficiency, I'm expecting you to use 0.25 hours to make a kettle. And therefore, to make 950 kettles, I'm expecting you, therefore, to spend 0.25 times 950 gives me 237. I'm expecting to spend 237 hours. 237.5 hours. That's what I'm expecting. You go along and you do 230 hours. So you're actually quite efficient there. So you're 7.5 hours efficient. And I'm going to multiply this, of course, by the 16, because that's how much we've cost an hour. So 7.5 times 16 is 120. So this is 120 favorable. So either it's A or it's C. So it's £120 favorable. Then, in terms of costing, I expect you to spend £16 on an hour. You go out there and you buy 230 hours. So hopefully the way I'm saying it gives you your train of thought as to how to deal with this. You go out there and you buy 230 hours. So that's 3,000. I expected you to have spent 3,680. You spent 3,795, which is more than I expected you to spend, 3,795. And so we have an adverse variance of 115, right? So 3,795. Compare this to this and you have 115, right? And so that's your answer right there, C. So yeah, I mean, we've discussed this. We have lectures on this, so go back and look at that. But that's kind of by now you should be at that point where you're kind of pushing through. Exactly the same thing here with variable overheads. I've got my standard cost of what I'm expecting, if you like, and if you like expecting. So here, £2 per labor hour. In terms of efficiency, so it says here the standard cost of each pump includes the following: 1,000 hours at £2 per labor hour. So right, so basically yes, I think what was slightly jarring me was I saw the 1,000 hours and I typically see it broken down. But you can see that what they're saying here is that you would need 1,000 hours to make 200 pumps. So therefore, 5 hours to make each pump. That's the story here. 5 hours. We expect you to use 5 hours to make each pump because it's 1,000 hours and we expect you to pay £2 per hour, if you like. And this is overheads. It's just variable overheads. But the same principle. Nothing has changed. So therefore, I expect you to spend 5 hours on each pump. So 5 times 220 pumps, which is what you did make, brings us to 1,100 in terms of overhead. In terms of overhead labor hours. So but it's kind of all based on labor and the same thing. It's the same thing. But you've spent 1,200. So you've spent 100 hours too much. Right, you spent 100 hours. It's exactly. Variable overheads depend on labor. So this is exactly the same variance I would have if I was doing a labor efficiency variance. So I have 100 hours, but this time instead of multiplying it by the labor rate, I'm multiplying it by the variable overhead rate, which is times 2, and that's adverse of 200. So straight away, I've got my answer there. That's the only thing with 200. So again, I expect you to use £2 per labor hour. You've done 1,200, so that's 2 times 1,200, that's 2,400. You've spent 2,400. Sorry, I expect you to spend 2,400. You've spent 2,100, so we have a favorable variance of 300. You can see here, 300 favorable. So your answer there is C. Your answer there is C. Question 169, which of the following would not explain a favorable material usage variance? So in terms of using the material, we had a positive. We expected maybe to use 500 kilograms. We've used 400 kilograms. This is in usage, just in terms of material. Using higher quality material, I agree. I think that would be favorable. I mean, I'm not answering the question just yet. This is not. So this will explain. So this was favorable. New machinery, yes, this is favorable. Negotiating a bulk buy discount. So this is to do with. I would have said this was to do with pricing and not usage. It says a bulk buy has nothing to do with usage. Using higher quality, more skill. So these are all favorable. So the odd one out here is C. So the answer is C. The answer is C. And again, I hope you're just ticking your answers to mine. Question 170. A company has identified an adverse labor efficiency. So we expected to use 500 hours. You've used 600 hours. Why? Which would be the most likely cause in terms of usage? Direct employees have been paying the high hourly rate. This is to do with pricing, not usage. More hours being taken to produce than assumed in the standard. Yes, this is definitely true. You're using more hours. Operatives making inefficient use of materials. Well, that would be with the material variance over there. Insufficient hours were worked by operators to absorb all the... no, I can't really see where they're going here. But this is the most obvious one. More hours being taken to produce the product. So you're taking more time, because efficiency is about time. So the answer here is B. The answer here is B. Okay, great. That's the end of our next set of videos, and I'll see you in the next set of videos.